I'm going to have a little rant, a little, musing right now about the South Africa versus Argentina game last week and the New Zealand versus Australia. But I'm going to focus on the two teams who I think need the most analysis. South Africa, first off, and Australia. And I'm going to come at it from a point of view where you might have to go back on the tapes and actually have a little look at it, because you might just think, oh, he's talking absolute shite. You think I'm talking rubbish. But you go back and you have a look, and I think maybe you might start to see what I was saying. So first off, I'm going to talk about South Africa. Now, South Africa did a couple of things wrong. And one of the key things I think they did, especially when Argentina went a man down, is they played too fast. Now, what you're thinking to yourself, oh, Argentina a man down, you play fast, you hit it wide, you actually hit those lines and you start winning some game-changing ball and you start putting lots of points on them. But South Africa didn't do it smart. So if you watch Faf de Klerk, he's pushing the pace non-stop, and he's a great nine. He's one of the best nines at pushing the pace and really running hard lines and keeping people in check. But he's running at such a pace, and he was running the game, certainly when that yellow card came, he was putting Yantes under a lot of pressure. So the ball would be flying 15, 20 yards backwards. Yantes is not set up. There's a forward pod ready to take a crash ball, and instead de Klerk thinks, oh, let's spread it wide, let's keep this tempo high. Puts him under huge pressure. And there's a period straight after that yellow where South Africa get the ball turned over because he can only give it out to Mapu, and he gets tackled, turnover, Argentina run it in the corner, or they get a penalty. I can't remember which. But to me, that was on Faf de Klerk. That little moment. Sure, the backline could have dealt with it better, but because he pushed that tempo too far, they were overrun in the backline and managed to lose the ball. So South Africa's game management needs to come from 9 and 10, and both 9 and 10 are quite inexperienced. I'd call them inexperienced. And Faf de Klerk needs to learn how to regulate a game. Great nine, one of the fastest, best defensive, just fantastic nine to watch. But he needs to learn how to marshal a game, especially against an unpredictable side like Argentina. Because when he comes up against a real unpredictable side in New Zealand and a real talent, they're going to need to be on a better game than that. That's my brief thought. I thought the South Africa generally, they were okay. They came through, they won in the end, but they're just little things need shining. Need a little bit of a polish. So yeah, that's my mini rant. And I love Faf de Klerk. I think he's a quality player. I can't say that enough. But I just think he let South Africa down a bit with his decision making. Too fast, too often. Needed to set it up a little bit more. So that's my South Africa chat. Let's move on to Australia. And this one I'm actually angry at Australia for. Because there's a number of reasons. But they were afraid. They were frightened of New Zealand. This wasn't a team that came off the back of an England game and thought, we're going to show them what we can actually do. This was a team that came off the back of an England game, and the mentality was, holy crap, we could actually be in trouble. They were scared of New Zealand. Every single time they got go forward ball, there's a period on the show The Breakdown. I just watched it, and I watched the whole game just now as well. Australia got go forward ball. Couple of crashes, Guinea snipe, and they were off. And Guinea comes back here to the bottom of the ruck, and he's about to give a flat pass to Foley. But instead, Foley's standing about 20 metres directly behind him, in the pocket, ready to give a kick. They've just had two momentum changing rucks of them going forward. Foley should be hitting that line flat, giving it to Tamua, giving it to Kurandrani, and watching them bust through a tackle. Because they both can. They're both perfectly capable of doing it at Super Rugby, and they're both perfectly capable of doing it at Test Match Rugby. So why Foley was standing back can only be either a set game plan or Foley himself was afraid. So the reason I think it might be a set game plan is because Naholo's great at turnover. If you spread it too wide too early, Naholo's turnover. You spread it wide against Barrett, he's going for the intercept. You spread it wide too early in the wrong place, Kieran Reid, Kano are on the wing, suddenly you've got go backwards ball. So Australia were afraid, and because it was the game plan, they decided, oh, you know what, we're not actually going to spread it wide ever, we're going to kick it to the best counter-attacking team in world rugby. The best. We're talking Israel Dag, we're talking Ben Smith, we're talking Naholo. You give these boys the ball, and they will absolutely destroy you, and that's what New Zealand did. They didn't even counter-attack particularly well. New Zealand didn't actually play that well. But because Foley wanted to kick everything and give them the ball, and their defence wasn't up to much, Australia, because of that, they ran away with it. And that was it. That's as simple as that. New Zealand didn't have to play well. Australia were already running scared from the get-go. They were worried. And because of that, they completely capitulated. And they just, nothing. There was nothing left. And there's talk about them being overcooked, overtrained because they weren't fit enough. At the end of the day, the core skills are there. The game plan's there. You shouldn't be losing by that much. Even to New Zealand, you should not be losing by that much. Something was wrong with the game plan. And I think Australia were frightened. I think they didn't want to commit to a wide play because they thought they'd be isolated. And I think that kicking it was the most conservative option for some reason, despite that being an absolutely horrific option. One of the worst. I think if Sevilla had played, sure, kick it. But he wasn't on the pitch. He wasn't there. And you didn't kick it to Naholo enough for it to be a problem. You give it to Dag, you give it to Smith. Because Barrett was cycling back there, you're giving it to Barrett. It's just horrendous from Australia. I was watching that again and just thinking, no. As soon as Giteau went off as well, it was over. That was game. Because he was the only one that perhaps didn't have the mindset of fear. Everybody else appeared to have the mindset of fear. Moore didn't want to talk to the ref too much. I noticed that. He didn't want to be that guy who was niggling, like the Dane Coles who was chatting to the ref and trying to get him on side. Didn't happen. He was frightened of getting in trouble, I suppose, with the media and everyone else. Pocock got told off very early on in the game, and Piper decided to put his foot down and say, no more, you're not allowed to take that. And he lost his head. Not as in he lost his head, he couldn't play, but just wasn't on the top form. And if we go back and we talk about Pocock, a little bit one-dimensional. His tackles didn't put people backwards. He always makes a tackle. Didn't put people backwards. Didn't get as much turnover as he normally does because Piper was strong on it. And it just wasn't quite there. Something was missing from Australia, and it was a bite. Everybody expected them to come out swinging, and they were not swinging. New Zealand just played well. Not fantastic. Just played well. Great hands, quality defence, physical, but they weren't spectacular in any single department. Everyone across the field played well, and that's the problem. Australia come out frightened and just lost. They lost that game. Alright, don't forget to subscribe. And that's it from me. I've been your host, Sav. And until the next time.